Hello and welcome to UC Summit. I'm Tom Wright from UC Today, and I'm delighted to be joined by Devin from Theta Lake. How's it going, Devin?
Very well. Thanks for having me, Tom. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. And we're going to be talking about what's going to be new at Theta Lake this year and what we can expect to see from you. But to start with, could you perhaps give us a quick overview of yourself and the company?
Sure. So I'm Devin Redmond. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Theta Lake, longtime participant and contributor to the security and compliance space, particular topics around um, data protection, compliance for communications over things like collaboration tools and modern digital platforms. At Theta Lake, we were founded with a mission to provide compliance and security for modern communications and modern collaboration tools such as Zoom, WebEx, Microsoft Teams, RingCentral, Slack, and you kind of name it, across the gambit of those.
So, if you think back over the last few months, it's been an incredibly busy time for the industry. Could you talk us through some of the trends that have been really dominating your discussions with customers?
Yeah, so I would say a lot of the trends that we talked about across 2021 really, if you kind of break it into first half and second half, the first half was um, really denoted or dominated by organizations trying to figure out if they were going to be doing hybrid work, if they were going to be going back to work, if it was shifting from a pandemic to an endemic, and what the nature of that would look like. And I think it raised a lot of questions around what they were going to do with their employee engagement, their customer engagement, in particular using their UC tools and their UC platforms. And then I think as we kind of shifted into the second half, those questions became increasingly answered by the reality that I think hybrid work is here to stay. That although many organizations and frankly people benefit by real face-to-face human interaction, the benefits and the capabilities of being able to have a fully hybrid work strategy where people are more flexible coming in, you have more distributed locations, you can hire employees and talent wherever they may be, and power all of that by using digital collaboration tools or UCaaS platforms with integrated chat, video, voice, whiteboarding, you name it on that front, became very clear. And so coming into the second half, it was about more formalization of what are the primary tools, what programs are we going to run around them, and then really operationalizing that infrastructure in a more, you could call it holistic way, but more thoughtful way, right? If you think about the previous year in 2020, there was a massive rollout of a myriad of tools to keep people communicating and keep them sharing information. And as we've kind of marched now into the back half of 2021, it's really about recognizing, hey, we need to standardize on the tools. We need to standardize on our architecture around those tools. So not just my implementation of Teams or my implementation of Zoom, but really how I ensure things like safety and compliance around how people interact on them. How do I drive employee engagement? How do I drive procedures and really enrich the experience across those platforms while making them much more substantial along the lines of a lot of the traditional infrastructure that organizations had for communications?
And so, security and compliance is what you guys are known for. It's what you do. But are there any particular elements of your offering that you've seen be particularly popular over recent months?
Uh, yeah, so for sure, and I think the pandemic in the previous year drove a lot of tailwinds for us in a very unexpected way, and I think drove a lot of learnings for us in 2021 in terms of how to make it easier for firms to adopt and organizations to adopt our technology, perhaps in a more incremental way or a more thoughtful way. And so with that as background, we're known for being able to capture, archive, provide third-party archive integration, really identify risks and create a rich review workspace across what is shared, shown, spoken, typed across chat or voice calling or video, which is a pretty robust suite of technology. And what we've found over the last year is that as organizations have adopted their communication tools very, very rapidly, yet they still have a very heritage or legacy, not to make it a loaded word, compliance infrastructure that's not really capable of bridging the gap between those. One of our most successful sets of product lines have been around our connectors, and there's kind of three primary functions in those connectors. First is a module that we call selective archiving, or the eComms archive module, and we announced that with Zoom, and subsequently have that capability with WebEx and other of our partners as well. And what that allows organizations to do is, if they're not quite ready for a full audio or video archiving program around meetings or around webinars, they can selectively archive just the in-meeting chat or the QA and the polling that happens inside of those to meet their obligations and meet their security requirements. But not only archive it with us and get risk insights with us, they can choose to use us to also send it to their legacy infrastructure, all seamlessly. We call this kind of the quick win, because it satisfies what end users want to do and how customers want to interact, but it's very low disruption for the compliance team. Meaning that we can just simply get content in a format that they would expect to see it, in the place that they would expect to see it in their existing archive and e-discovery infrastructure. And that has been a massive hit. We see organizations who have typically disabled those features turn them on very, very rapidly because they can meet their regulatory obligations, because it satisfies compliance requirements, and because it's very low disruption. So that is one big aspect of that. The other one is similar thing for modern workstream collaboration and chat platforms, where I think many organizations had a footprint using Slack, using Symphony, using Skype, now switching to Teams, using WebEx messaging as examples in that space, but they weren't as primary previously. And so what they were doing for capture seemed fine, which is typically taking the text content, formatting it like an email, sending it to their existing email archive, and then relying on some search threading and some capabilities in those platforms, which seemed fine when they were more secondary tools. But when they became primary, the need to be able to search across a conversation and find risks inside of that, and understand the difference between a reaction or an emoji or a GIF or a file that may be embedded in that conversation, and how it changes the context of the conversation or what's actually in that file, made that older approach of trying to turn it into an email very, very difficult. And so one of the other successful products in our suite is our connector, which allows a more native capture of those platforms at scale. And we have deployments over 100,000 users doing this, where we will capture it, we can annotate it with our risk detections, we will send it in a searchable format using things like X headers into the existing archive of record, their email archive, but we will also give them things like a PDF view so they can look at the native conversation, not just threaded, but a fully contextual view of the conversation. Or they can even link back to our conversation viewer if they want to leverage things like inline detections or search over the entire timeline of a conversation in chat. And so that as a way to bridge the gap on the needs around e-discovery and the needs to really understand those conversations have been super powerful. And I think when our customers have started with those very focused projects, they've been very successful at then increasing their utilization of things like our risk classifiers and our review workspace and a lot of the routing rules that we do. So those have just been a few examples. So the selective archiving for meetings and webinars, and then our connectors for things like modern workplace collaboration chat.
Okay, and then looking forward to the rest of the year, are you able to give us any clues about what we might expect to see from Theta Lake over the next 12 months or so?
Yeah, so you will see an increasing acceleration in our partnerships with the leaders in the UC space, whether it's in online meetings or UCAS. I think one thing that has set us apart is we're very aware of the communication layer and very embedded with our partners. So we do a lot of work with, all the vendors that kind of top the coverage of UC today in terms of enabling collaboration and communication across digital channels. So you will see very significant deepening and acceleration of the things that we do with those partners around content capture, around offerings that make it easy for customers to adopt our technology to make what happens inside of their meetings safer. And then you will see a broadening of our feature set on the control side for how organizations want to be able to utilize their communication infrastructure across different demographics. And then I think the other big thing you'll see from us is a broadening of the content types as well. We're seeing more and more different tools used that leverage visual mediums inside of these communications. So that interplay between text, voice, images, for example, things that happen inside of whiteboarding where you're sharing diagrams and modifying diagrams in real time, but then you have chat underneath that where you're explaining what's happening in those sessions. All of those things need coverage, need capture, need the ability to look at them in context and how they relate to each other. And so those will all be big areas for us.
Okay, Devin, it's been great to have you on. Thanks so much for your time, and I'm sure we'll speak throughout the year.
Hey, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you'll find more great content over at the Theta Lake Content Hub. We hope you enjoy UC Summit, and we'll see you next time.